In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, be advised that a notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board in Town Hall and forwarding to the officially designated newspapers that this meeting would take place at Town Hall at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, April 4th, 2023. Meeting details and the draft agenda were also posted on our township website. Please all stand to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can you bring it like one? Before you call it.
Yep. Ready? Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cohen,
Michael, you're on mute.
Mr. Cohen,
Michael, you're on mute.
Here.
thank you. Ms. Prukas,
Here.
Ms. Romano,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Vinayak,
Here,
Mayor Miggins.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And none opposed? Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the February 21, 2023 Township Committee minutes? Motion. May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
me. I wasn't here.
Thank you, Mr. Vinayak. May I have a motion to approve the February 28, 2023 Special Township Committee minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Reports. Please provide reports. So we'll start with Ms. Prukas. Any reports for you today?
No reports.
No reports. Mr. Cohen, do you have any reports for us this evening?
I do not.
Thank you, sir. Deputy Mayor Vinayak, would you have any reports for us today, sir?
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you.
So we had a, I would think, a great session for flood mitigation last week. It was on site with the flood mitigation committee. Mayor, with a lot of folks coming from, and it was specifically for East Branch. We were taking public session by where the town is being impacted. So it was focused on East Branch and we had a very good turnout. People asked really good questions. And secondly, we are almost done with the project, drainage project that we are doing at the South Mountain area. Mr. McDonald, do you know if you finished or we were?
No, we're about a couple days away from finishing the heavy work, and then it goes into restoration.
Okay. So, and there were some good feedback. People have already seen some benefits. I don't know how from the drainage, but whatever work they were doing, there were a couple of residents who came in are already feeling where the rain comes in and it used to clog their backyards is good, sweeping the waterway quicker. So that was in flood mitigation. So kudos to the team, kudos to the flood mitigation committee. Shout out to them and shout out to Deputy Mayor Richard Wasserman, who put in a lot of time last year. And then we also had Public Safety Advisory Board meeting, and I would like to just again remind everyone, it used to be once in 2 months or quarterly meeting. Now it is until June, it is monthly meeting. So please attend if you have any concerns about public pedestrian safety. Please bring it up into that meeting and also use SDL portal because we are looking at SDL portal concerns and comments from residents to acknowledge if there is pedestrian safety issue in that meeting. So we have increased the frequency till summer. So please join us. When is it? You can see it online when the next meeting is.
The 11th.
Tuesday, the 11th. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Ms. Romano, any reports?
Yes, thank you. Just real quick, I also want to give a huge thank you to the Flood Mitigation Committee for their hard work and dedication. It was an excellent presentation last week. And it just goes to show you that when our volunteers, our township committee, and our employees work together, great things happen. It was heartwarming to hear the gratitude from our families that experienced devastating loss. They also spoke last week, so it was really a great meeting. Just a couple of notes on from Sid. The second annual Founders Day is April 22nd at Taylor Park from 12 to 3. There's a number of groups contributing, 19th century music, public art unveilings, a fine art show, and community art program at various locations throughout the downtown. Explore is working with the Short Hills Garden Club on a commercial district litter patrol from 10 to 12. You can volunteer on the Explore milburnshorthills.org website by clicking on events and volunteering. Explore is also offering 4 business education classes in April. How to grow social media, which is tomorrow at 9 o'clock with a follow-up on April 19th. And how to effectively write a business plan on April 11th at 5:30 with part 2 on April 26th, understanding your financial statement. If anyone is interested in registering, they can reach out to Steve Grillo at steve@exploremilburnshorthills.org. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Mr. McDonald, do you have any reports for us? Please.
Yes, just a few brief reports. One, I wanted to make the community aware that the changes that were done at the end of last year regarding the parking deck are now implemented in that parking deck. So just to go over those changes very quickly, the first floor of the parking deck is now all shopper parking. That is 103 shopper spaces. The second floor is all business permit parking as well as 24-hour parking. That is 68 business permit spaces and 40 24-hour spaces. And then there is on the third floor remains the commuter parking, which is 133 spaces. The outside of the parking deck, the surface spaces remain the same. Those are 25 business. So those changes are in place now. Signage is in place. There is a variable message board outside of the deck temporarily until we put in the permanent sign that will indicate as people pull in off of Essex Street exactly what is allowed on each level. And so good that those changes are completed. Just a quick reminder as the weather starts to warm up, and in the vein of pedestrian safety, there's going to be a lot more activity, a lot more people out using our streets and sidewalks. So I just ask that everybody use caution, make sure that you're stopping for people in crosswalks, and just know that, there's going to be a lot more activity. Other than that, I do not have any other reports now.
While you're talking about parking deck and shopper parking permits, do you know, to reiterate, we sell a parking permit for $60 for the year, I guess it is. I just bought one. So rather than having to use the machines, which were just changed over as well.
Yeah, some of our pay stations that were damaged during Hurricane Ida have been replaced, and they actually also now offer a Apple Pay or a Google Pay contactless way of paying as well.
Perfect, thank you. Just to put on everybody's schedule, if they wish, we had a resident who had asked us if there was a way we could get motor vehicle commission to come to our town to, licenses, I guess, and registration. And so we called John McKeon, our assemblyman, and he made this happen for us. So I'm very happy about that. On May 10th at the library from 10 to 2 p.m. You can meet with the motor vehicle commission to take care of those things that you'd like to take care of. You do need to register online. We put something out on Swift 911 today about that.
Just recently.
Just an announcement. So look for that. It'll be on May 10th. Also, if you're driving on Hobart Gap and Hobart, you'll see that the heads are up for the lights. And so we're looking to bring those on in late April. And we'll put signage up first though to,
Yeah, there will be a lot of advanced warnings, variable message boards letting you know traffic changes happening and things like that.
right, okay, terrific. And also the pool is in need of lifeguards. So if any of the people in our town wish to apply, we do need lifeguards at the town pool. And the Memorial Day Parade, which will be held on Memorial Day this year. Our Grand Marshal is Gary Walls. Many of you know him. He is one of our crossing guards at the middle school. So we're really excited about that. So please mark your calendars for the Memorial Day Parade on Memorial Day at 11, starting at the high school. So, thank you. Mr. Marizzi, do you have any reports for us, sir?
It happens that I do this evening.
Oh,
So
okay, great.
there has been over time, as I've sat in this seat, a number of times where we've had conversations about the Bear Properties litigation. And there's been a new development in that litigation, and I want to report to the Township Committee about that. Just some background about the Bear Properties litigation that began in 2020. It's a challenge to the ordinance establishing the Special Improvement District, the SID. The challenge focuses on the alleged failure to have a feasibility study, the alleged conflict of Committeewoman Prupus, and an issue regarding notice and opportunity to be heard. That matter has been in a situation where there was a dispute about discovery. On behalf of the township, we had asked for a copy of the leases of the plaintiffs. And in that case, there was a challenge to providing those. The judge provided that they should be provided to the township with a confidentiality protection. And since about September, there has been, before the judge, two competing proposals for a confidentiality protection. The judge has not decided between the two. I understand that when my partner Andy Brewer went to file today our brief, and I'll tell you about that in a minute, that the case has actually been closed. The court closed the case. That's what the electronic system said. But what I'm here to talk about is that a motion was filed by the plaintiffs to follow up on the request by Ms. Urso that was made a couple of times, that the township agree to deposit the payments from the assessment to the property, to the businesses, to deposit them in escrow. I had suggested at a meeting in the past that you not entertain that if that were to be the case, while a lawsuit is filed, the SID would be starved of its revenue stream and its cash flow and would not be able to function. So a motion has been filed to ask the court to do that and ask the court to order that there be deposited in court the assessments that are made by the SID would have the same effect. So we have filed a motion to oppose that on the basis that there's no argument in the moving papers that is supported by case law. There's no legal or factual basis to provide that relief. What the argument of the plaintiffs is that the mere filing of the lawsuit to challenge the ordinance resulted in what's called a stay. In other words, an effort to interrupt the implementation of the ordinance. We've argued very persuasively in the brief that was filed today that goes contrary to the long-established provision that ordinances and actions of municipal bodies are presumed valid until a court determines that they're not. So the court has not determined that they're invalid. There is no stay, nor has there been any effort made in the moving papers to establish a basis for an injunction against the collection of the fee. So we have filed a motion, a brief rather, to counter that motion, which I'm sorry to say contains many disjointed political invective statements, statements that have nothing to do with the Bear Properties case, but reiterate complaints that are made over and over again at this meeting about other matters of the Township Committee. So we're rather confident that the court will not grant that motion. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
So the original case is closed?
Mr. Brewer ran into that impediment when he attempted this afternoon to file the brief. And I think that the case has been now reopened by this, but it had been lying dormant for all that time since September.
Thank you.
I did forget something and you reminded me, as of March, I forgot to report earlier, the downtown vacancy is at 3.1% compared to 4.5 for the entire CID. And as a point of reference, the vacancy rate in mid-2020 was 16%. So we have 40 new businesses that have opened since 2022, 23, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Purpose, any questions for Ms. Marzulli?
No, I forgot to make an
Sure,
announcement
go.
though. On April 30th at 12 o'clock, there's going to be a river cleanup. So I think like 2 years ago, we did this with the Environmental Commission. Priya Patel is heading it up, and she serves on the Environmental Commission. So, and it's really cool because we actually like walk in the river, starting at the Milburn Library field. So wear boots and clothing that can be waterproof and get wet. And just as long, I mean, if there's a lot of water, we're not walking in it. But as long as it's just, and cleaning up. So Alex, did I forget anything on that?
No, and usually we have a person from DPW that assists.
All right, right, and we learn about invasive species and just the other
Just
thing,
putting it out there.
right, the knowledge, and just about the river basin, and it's really fun. So it's on the website and it's on our social media. So if you want to join, April 30th,
Thank you.
12 o'clock. Yeah.
Thank you. Before we move on to public comment, I will be making a mayoral appointment. I hereby appoint Michael Zion, Class 4, to the Planning Board to the vacant alternate 2 position with the term expiration of December 31st, 2024. Public comment. When invited to speak, please come to the lectern, clearly state your name and whether you are a Milburn resident and/or property or business owner, and speak loudly so that your comments may be understood by all and properly recorded. Please do not provide your full address, seeing our meetings are recorded and are readily available to the public. For the convenience of our community, there is a remote option available. If you called in and would like to comment, please press *6 now. If you are attending by computer or electronic device, please click the raise hand button. All members of the public wishing to speak will be put into the queue to address the committee. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers are asked to limit their comments to 1 3-minute session. You will be prompted when there are 30 seconds remaining. Each individual will be given 1 opportunity to make their public comment. Please be patient, and we will address each member of the public that wishes to speak. This is a business meeting, and please do not address professionals or staff directly, and please direct all your comments to me. A reminder that we are all neighbors and personal attacks will not be tolerated. I will now open the public comment period.
Good evening, Dave Cosgrove, resident. I wanted to say first, thank you for putting together ordinance 2634-3023, which is on tonight. So thanks very much. It's an important ordinance. I did, encourage you folks to vote for it. The other 2 items I had was really a follow-up to try to get the status of 2 things that are out there. One is the status of the Citizen Fair Share Housing, committee that we talked about last year. I think everyone was in favor of it, so I'd like to just see that, move forward. And the last is I had presented to the board over time, over the last couple of years, the concept of getting applications that are filed before the zoning board or before the planning board, to get those posted on the town site as soon as they're filed, as opposed to when they're finally approved. That gives residents, one, a feeling that nothing's being hidden from them. And I know you folks, over the course of time have taken a figurative beating, on that. And it also gives the residents time to get their experts together so they can present their concepts. I've heard concerns that possibly if that happens, residents will misinterpret what that application is, meaning it's an application, it's not approved yet by anybody, it hasn't been looked at by our professionals. I think a disclaimer on that, would be fine. I think we can use the Milburn First Alert system to do that. Someone could sign up saying, I want to know about an application the minute it's filed, not the minute it's approved or the minute it shows up on an agenda for those meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cosgrove.
Good evening, my name is Jeffrey Feld. As we learned today, no one's above the law. Transparency, accountability, and adherence to the rule of law. Our country is based on checks and balances, and so is this administration. I'm waiting for a response from the BA as to some questions about the employee handbook, about anti-nepotism regarding who the chair of the rec commission is, and the use of public space for the announcement of someone's running for re-election. As to reports, we heard a report about Bear Properties case. That's the computer, the system, the motion's pending. One of the issues is whether there's representation about taxation without representation. The court will decide that. But there was no report on the Feld versus Milburn motion where the court directed the township to file an answer within 30 days. And they stunted that this township did where they tried to file a certification on the eve of the hearing saying that the case was moot. The judge rejected that. There's been no report on the fair share declaratory judgment where there wanted to be a settlement as to discussion with the court case management conference as to how much we should pay fair share housing because of their motion. There was no discussion about the meeting that the BA and the mayor had with the Orange BA regarding the reservoir. So I speak to the BA of Orange many times and he confirmed what I've been telling you for years. There's been no report about the Essex Union Joint Committee. Newark follows the minutes as to that. We know who sits on there and that person receives a stipend. I think we should have a report. As to the consent agenda, the bill list, there's a payment to Mr. Cantor. This is the fourth payment that is made. Does it exceed the cap that he had? How much are we paid? Did any of you read the time summaries to see whether he's researching the work that was done by Mr. Buzek, Mr. Marizzi's firm? We rely on someone to check this kind of stuff. Why are we paying for work that was done before his retention? If you look at some of what's been provided, why does it take more than 30 days to get the response of these documents are supposed to be immediately produced? If we have broken windows, if Mr. Cantor can't file or is violating his retention, how can we believe his representation in front of the declaratory judgment action? As to the tax appeal underpayment credits, I think there's still an issue that the blocks and the name should be done. I provided you with a case that came out of the appellate division last week. I think that information should be produced. As to lot 14 parking lot bid, we had a public forum. No one ever responded to you. So now you're going out for plans that the public was never told what you're going to plan to do. You had a public forum. You said you'd respond to us. Now we find out today you're bidding. As to the nominations, as to the zoning, it seems like you're rewarding someone who was a good foot soldier for the Democratic Party. This person has stood up and says she's against artificial turf, which is sort of the solution that we're seeking for fields. This person tried to have me removed as a poll watcher. I'm wondering whether what we're looking at. As to the SIP board nomination, I attend SIP boards. That nomination was never submitted to the board prior to your consideration. What goes on here? As to the historic commission, it seems that you're elevating someone's running mate after the fact. Finally, the next few days, happy Passover, happy Easter, whoever celebrates. And just reflect as to the Jewish people, this is liberation from slavery and for liberty and freedom. And again, enjoy the holidays with your families.
Thank you, Mr. Feld.
Good evening, Jerry Kung, I'm a resident. I'd like to start by thanking Deputy Mayor Vinayak for presiding over a professional and dignified Township Committee meeting in Ms. Miggins' absence. Mr. Vinayak gave his best attempts to answer questions raised during public comment, which is more than can be said for Ms. Miggins, who has repeatedly refused to answer any questions related to her fair share housing agreement, an agreement that she negotiated and approved without any prior public comment. Ms. Miggins is running for re-election on a purported record of professionalism and calm demeanor and being a strong advocate for transparency. This could not be further from the truth. Instead of considering empty words, let's review her actions. In the past month, Ms. Miggins lashed out at residents who have courageously spoken truth to power in questioning the capricious and unaccountable actions of this committee. Ms. Miggins, I would like to direct your attention to Resolution 23-064, which you voted affirmatively on. Resolution as to the rules of procedure and order of business. Article 6, fair and orderly proceedings. Section 3, elected and appointed officials' conduct with the public in public meetings. Making the public feel welcome is an important part of the democratic process. No signs of prejudice or disrespect should be evident on the part of individual members of the Township Committee toward any individual participating in a public forum. Every effort should be made to be fair and impartial when listening to public comment. I hope that you will reflect upon your unbecoming behavior and make every effort to abide by the resolution that you voted for. I'm noting that you're snickering at my statement. And now on to transparency or lack thereof. At the TC meeting on February 7th, you justified your opposition to reinstating Zoom on the grounds that YouTube doesn't cost anything, but Zoom does. If you didn't want the Zoom reinstated, at least have the courage to admit it publicly instead of hiding behind spurious reasoning. By the way, the marginal cost of running a Zoom meeting is $0, which is far less than the amount of money our town will be spending on the 75-unit, 100% exclusionary bonus unmet need housing project slated for the current location of the town dump. Could you please share with the community any and all financial analyses that have been undertaken to assess the huge crater that will be left in the budget as a result of this disastrous project? And could you please also repost any and all environmental testing done at the DPW site? The dump testing documents that used to be there have been taken down. Could you please explain why this is the case? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Khan.
Jean Pasternak, property owner. I have a few questions first. What was the budget supposed to be presented before the end of March per the local finance board notice? Why is it that the budget was held back then for public presentation until April? Question on the fair share housing hearing. Will this be available via virtual access to residents and taxpayers of Milburn? And when would the public be notified of that Zoom link or whatever it's going to be done? And could you inform us as to how Milburn became involved in a News 12 TV segment on affordable housing? How did you come to be interviewed? Can you just address that? I have just some comments to address to actually Michael Cohen. Michael, you and I both worked and were trained by JP Morgan. We both made Short Hills our homes for our families. I'm certain that you take as much pride in our long-term employer as our premier community. We both were trained as banking professionals about risk management and the importance of transparency and accountability, and the criticality of having checks and balances in every organization. I think it's a good assumption that you are in strong favor of having proper checks and balances in local government as well as banks, since you as a public official are entrusted with public monies as a township committee member. I would love to have you address us as taxpayers and residents as to whether you feel we were given proper notice of the terms of the fair share settlement agreement prior to being voted upon. Do you see any risks associated with this impactful and serious omission? You pledged to use your training and experience in banking in your role as a TC member. This township, I believe, has a major risk management issue with that agreement, and as well as a looming constitutional one. I have not met anyone in all my interactions for the past several years who agrees with the way in which the fair share settlement agreement was handled by the Township Committee. noting the 2,000 plus people who signed a petition opposing the project at the dump site, which was featured, I think, in that News 12 segment. They unanimously disagree with the Township's committee's vote on the portion of the agreement transforming our township with a 100% 75 unit high density overdevelopment. And that's without taxpayer and residents input. The way this was done was in direct opposition to everything we were trained to do at JP Morgan. I believe in Michael's integrity, having been trained there and employed there for a long time. And I would really like you to weigh in on this. Thank you.
Evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Christine Best, I'm Township resident. I'm going to give you all a break from 5G tonight. I'm excited. So I'm going to talk about the rec commission right now. Just want to give my statement because unfortunately I missed the 29th meeting. However, I did listen to the entire meeting on YouTube, and thank you so much, Mr. McDonald, for actually posting that. While I fully support the need for recreation, addressing the needs of township residents' activities, it should never come at the expense of major environmental damage to unique and special properties, historic properties, wetlands, and any residential's legal right to peace, health, and enjoyment of their properties. Properties such as the Par 3, the Okie Tract, a natural buffer in the Hartshorn Deerfield area, Old Short Hills Park / Greenwood Garden should be completely off limits to such development. And I know that there was significant talk about that a few meetings ago, and I saw it was still on the deck as a consideration. Off-limits that creates invasive pockets of environmental destructions and creep of commercial-like spaces into environments that should be maintained as residential. They are rare open spaces for passive recreation that is necessary to retain the township's bucolic environment that most people purchase here for. Ungreen recreation fields have no place in these areas. Residents should never have their existing tranquil neighborhoods destroyed by light trespass, which is a law in the state of New Jersey and on your books, on our Milburn Township books. It causes circadian disruption, visual pollution, noise, parking, and airborne and topical toxic chemicals, these fields. This does not even include the effects on environment and animals. Compacting a bunch of fields together even creates more of an exaggerated level of this type of disruption. Perhaps spreading out the fields is a better way. The entire focus of these presentations are being driven by the Recreation Department and not Milburn Township residents. I've sat or listened to all the meetings. The town is not just about children's needs, it's about honoring the values of the many and the individual property rights owners. In terms of Old Shore Park, I'm sure that Peter Blanchard is turning over his grave over the comment that we can now convert his legacy, that's not an exact quote, into a bunch of turf fields. I'm sure the Milburn Historical Society or the board members at Greenwood Gardens would not support this land grab. It appears that only people pushing this agenda is the Recreation Committee and volunteers. In the first meeting, I heard probably a few people discussing the inconvenience of driving out of town for cricket in the first meeting. Okay, softball and baseball lovers and soccer lovers, it's time to share the fields with the cricket lovers. We just need to do that, like appease them. The second meeting had no one or two people in favor of destroying these coveted spaces. I find it odd how there are practically any residents that come out to support the implementation of new fields. Is there a petition from these residents? Do we really have a sense of what the population of Milburn Township wants? I'm sure if all these residents had been notified, which they were not, they would have been out in droves. Why didn't you mail out flyers? Why? I actually asked that in the first meeting. Why did you only email people on the community pass email? I found out from a friend that you had a meeting on the 29th. I had no idea. It was a biased mailing. Where's the PowerPoint on the township email? Website. If the agenda was making this democratic, then it wasn't accomplished. Why was there no recap of the Board of Ed feedback when you met with them? I just have a few more paragraphs. I'll be quick if it's okay. If you want to cut me off,
Christine, just keep going.
Thanks. Thank you, Maggie, Ms. Miggins. There are lots of great ideas thrown around, such as sharing and leasing fields with neighboring towns, purchasing land from East Orange, Essex County, looking at a building parking deck at Petco Trader Joe's and building 1 or 2 fields on the large existing lot behind it. Converting, Annie says, possibly into a playing field, the Wyoming School, High School Pace, Glenwood School, etc. Lighting fields that remain in non-residential areas only should be an option. The presentation I felt was biased with selective comps only showing Summit and Verona. That's a selective comp. I was an executive in data analytics. Have you contacted sampling of towns that is larger? I would like to see the raw data current playable hours, the factoring methodology that was used to calculate these needed hours. It's just a clean PowerPoint deck. It could just come, I'm not saying it was made up, and I'm like, I'd like to see what the methodology was, and somebody was actually a data analytics expert that pulled these numbers. It needs to be presented from the viewpoints of multiple inputs, not the bias of the rec department. While this is being worked out, I suggest making one more immediate, this is a suggestion, because I actually think it would actually benefit you. Meeting a staff addition to the Milburn Township rec staff. You need a dedicated field scouter, like a coordinator, and possibly some tax revenue to field rentals as an interim solution until the Board of Ed can be converted and additional spaces can be identified, similar to what you guys did with the parking lot issue with the train station. That was brilliant when you had the valet parking. It was the most brilliant idea ever. Maybe doing something like that. I just wanted to point out, I'm not going to get into all the stuff. The biggest thing that I wanted to go back to, and I know I differ, Regina Truitt, okay? I don't know the woman, but she actually made some very valid environmental concerns that are completely legitimate. And I spent about 2 hours today researching them. And there, if you really start to just dig deep, there's a lot of issues. There's recycled rubber under these playing fields. So it's really pretty toxic. It actually causes flooding issues. And if you pull up, there's all these townships that had referendums and complaints, et cetera. So it's actually a big deal and it should be seriously considered. I'm not saying don't do artificial turf, but maybe it needs to be really considered. I don't think artificial turf is really appropriate in places like Old Shore Hills Park. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was just quickly, and I'm gonna stop with the lighting because I don't have any more time. The lighting is a violation of New Jersey state trespass laws. It is so ungreen. And if I lived on Glen Avenue by the library, I would not be, I would be taking legal action. Please do not light up all the residential areas, I beg you. Thank you so much
Thank
again,
you.
always for your time, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Miss.
Good evening. My name is Frank Sacamandi, and I'm a resident of town. Tonight, I'm going to talk about everyone's favorite topic, the Fair Share Housing Settlement Agreement. Ms. Miggins, you have repeatedly stated that your goal during the Fair Share Housing negotiations was to keep densities as low as possible. As it turns out, though, your actions suggest that you either fell woefully short of your stated goal or you had an ulterior motive because you wound up negotiating the worst settlement agreement in the state. So let's dig into that for a moment. As I've explained in the past, there are two main components of a municipality's affordable housing obligation. There is the RDP, which is simply the number of units that must be built, and then there is the unmet need, which is not required to be built. Towns simply need to address the unmet need by creating opportunities for the future construction of affordable housing. Given that, most towns satisfy their unmet need through zoning overlays. Ms. Miggins, could you please explain to the community why you agreed to saddle our town with two bonus unmet need projects that were not required as part of the RDP? To be clear, the two projects I'm referring to are the 100% exclusionary housing project on the contaminated DPW site and the 195 unit project on the Canoe Brook Reservoir. Since these projects were not part of the RDP and didn't need to be built, why did you decide to burden our town with these projects when you could have simply addressed this portion of the unmet need through zoning overlays? Is it a coincidence that these two bonus unmet need vanity projects will yield 114 affordable units, 75 for the dump housing and 39 for Canoe Brook? This number, 114, is exactly the same as our RDP. It's almost as if during the fair share housing negotiations, Milburn agreed to affirmatively build double what was required by law. As for the RDP, in Exhibit A of the settlement agreement titled Vacant Land Analysis, the final row relates to Annie Says, Block 705, Lot 1. It shows an alleged acreage of 3 and a density of 50 units an acre, yielding 150 total units, of which 20%, or 30 units, contribute to the RDP. However, Block 705, Lot 1 is only 2.22 acres. Ms. Miggins, could you please explain this discrepancy and where the density of 50 is coming from? If this is indeed an oversight, doesn't the settlement agreement need to be revised to reflect the lower RDP and reduce the total number of units at Annie Says to 110? Could you please explain why you agreed to this vacant land analysis, inflating the density of the project by 35%? If you truly wish to be transparent, this should be a simple question for you to answer. Ms. Miggins, Many of the questions I have asked of you tonight have been asked in the past, and you chose not to answer them. In the interest of adhering to Attorney Marazidi's law of common courtesy, I ask that you show our residents the courtesy of answering these questions in full, as you have not seen fit to do so in the past. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sacramento. I think there's some. So you need to put us. Mr. Moriali, you're muted and we need to see your picture, please. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Hi, Jay Moriali, resident. I'd like to compliment the township on the second rec session, which with the public. It was a very good session. It was great turnout from the public and very good presentation made by the committee members. I'd also like to compliment committee member Cohen on his comments at the last township committee meeting regarding including residents on the committee that's being formed to work on recommendations for the fields. I think far too often the committees are put together and don't include specific resident concerns to be addressed. So I'd like to second Mr. Cohen's comments and recommend that move forward. I'd also like to second Mr. Cosgrove's comments regarding the creation of a residence group to provide input on the fair share housing process. My recollection is at the end of last year, everyone was behind it, and it was pushed to 2023 as I believe Committeewoman Prupis was not in the meeting, and we were going to have new members joining in January. So I'd like to, I agree with Mr. Cosgrove that this is a very good thing to do, and we should move forward with that. And I would like to wish everyone a happy Easter and Passover and a good holiday to all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moriali.
Good evening, Perry Urso, property owner. So I have a couple comments about our resolutions on your agenda this evening. Resolution 23-105. So I have some concerns. I'm wondering how you can actually vote on this resolution when there was absolutely no follow-up from the public forum from January 24th. Actually, Mr. Feld had spoken about this. And a meeting with professionals on January 20th. So there were two separate occasions that I actually attended. There's been absolutely no update on the initial draft of Lot 14 to concerned property owners. The township has not afforded a revised plan or an approved plan of Lot 14. Township has not answered the public's outstanding questions who attended the forum and surrounding properties which would be directly affected by these changes in parking Lot 14. Regarding Resolution 23-111. Once again, I would respectfully request that both Mayor and Committeewoman Prupis recuse themselves because they both have a conflict having their businesses within one of the 5 special improvement districts. How can you vote on a resolution when the SID board, to my knowledge, never introduced on their agenda or approved this nomination for consideration by this township committee? Separate note, I also wanted to ask, is this body going to introduce an amended solid waste ordinance prior to the comment stated by our BA that the change of policy would become effective June 1st? And forgive me, also contrary, it's interesting that your township attorney, interestingly enough, did not report, and I know Mr. Feld also mentioned this, about reports regarding the virtual hearing, on March 24th, Feld versus Milburn. Interestingly enough, the special defending counsel for the township contradicted the actions of our municipal attorney and actually acknowledged that no discovery could occur in a prerogative writ action until after a mandatory case management conference. So therefore, would that mean that the Bear property would not be dormant? This is a consistent pattern, and all members of this committee need to investigate. A serious consideration to taxation without representation. Thank you for your time this evening. Happy Passover, happy Easter.
Thank you.
Good
Ms.
night.
Hudson. Have a nice evening. I will now close the public comment period. At this time, our professionals and committee members may directly answer any questions made by the public. Ms. Prufus, do you have anything to?
A few things.
Yes, please.
The Fair Share Housing meeting on the 17th, is that going to be recorded, or is there going to be Zoom? It's going to be recorded. Is there Zoom capabilities or virtual?
Yeah, so yes, it will be recorded, and yes, it will be via Zoom. However, there's currently no setup in there, so we are actually working on that internally and how we can. We're working on purchasing a camera, and we'll be testing it out next week. But yes, that is the hope.
Great. And then so hopefully going forward, when we have these large public forums, we'll be able to.
As I stated to the staff, we should be able to take our show.
Awesome. Great. The environmental testing from the DPW site, is that still on the website?
I'm not sure, but I will certainly look into that and make sure that it is if it's not.
Okay, great. The applications that are for the planning and the zoning board, when they're filed, is there any statute that says that they can't be shared at the time that they're filed? Is there any law, or is it just the preference of the township at this point?
So there, again, I am not sure. That would be something that we'd have to look into, whether there is a law. However, I think there are various other considerations that need to be taken into account when making a decision like that. In particular, the fact that, and Mr. Cosgrove had stated it, that the application is not deemed complete. It could go through several revisions. You could have things that are already trying to be addressed. And so there's a lot of considerations that need to be taken with this. This is not a practice that I'm aware of that occurs elsewhere.
And so like one of the problems is that there's so many revisions that take place from the first initial filing towards the time it comes to.
There
meeting.
absolutely could be.
But it is law for it to be put on once it's approved.
I don't know that it's even law for that, but I think that, and we do.
That's our practice. Is there a possibility for it at least to be public before it comes to a meeting, like knowing that it's draft? So not the initial time, but let's say they get a date and so they know it's going to happen, it comes in, lots of revisions back and forth, but then they get a date and then there's a packet that goes out for the meetings. When there's a packet that goes out to the boards, at that point, could it become public?
Yeah, I mean, I think that and if that is not currently how it's done, which I believe it is, if it's something that needs to be done sooner, then yes, I think that is much more achievable.
I will add to that. When it's deemed complete, we should put it online. I know we get the package when I was on planning board for the next meeting, but if there are other files that are complete but waiting for the following meeting, I think it should be okay to share the information.
We need to bear in mind that the planning board and the board of adjustment are independent bodies that have separate counsel and their own procedures. We don't control that. We can make recommendations and things of that sort, but those are independent governmental entities that are staffed with their own engineers, attorneys, and so on.
But this does go with the township matters and.
Yeah, yes, that's right. But I mean, what I'm trying to point out is that we don't make the decision about how they handle their procedures.
So perhaps
I'm
this is
sure.
also something that should be brought.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly something I'm sure that can be discussed and cooperatively dealt with, but I'm just trying to keep us in our lane
Okay,
from the legal point of view.
got it. The Citizen Committee on Fair Share Housing, we haven't talked about it since last fall. Does anyone have any thoughts, or do we want to talk about it at the next meeting? Or is there even enough consensus to have it on the agenda, if not at the next meeting, at some future meeting under old business?
I'm in favor of getting that vote done for the 2025 cycle. It shouldn't be confusing in what settlement we have right now and
I don't think the
go off
request is-
track on that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm actually in favor of that too.
I don't recall where we left off.
It got tabled at the end of the year, right? I wasn't
Because-
at that meeting.
Because who wants to sit on it? You have enough? I have enough. Who wants to sit on it?
I don't have enough. I
Would
can
you like to sit on
I
it?
mean, I think that I would like for someone else to sit on it with me. I think it should be a two-person. Two members of the TC should be sitting on it. For sure. So if somebody else would sit on it with me. At least through the end of the year, right? If we get it going and then you want to sit on it till the end of the year.
Only in full through the end of the year, so
What?
I have a lot of other committees that I'm doing through the end of the year.
True.
And I want to be true to that too.
Well,
So I
maybe we
wouldn't-
We'll
could
think
have,
about it.
if you sat on it, Tara, maybe we could make sure that we have enough people or professionals to be there as well with it.
I really think it's like, you need two TC members sitting on it.
Agreed.
So, and
I have too many
Committees, I do too as well.
commitments as it is.
Well, let's start with one at least.
so again, I'm going to say for this to be an effective committee, you need two TC members sitting on it. And if there's not anybody that wants to join me in it, that's okay too. And maybe next year, there'll be other people that want to join me in it. So it seems like there's not a consensus to keep this going.
Let's talk this further again, I guess.
I'm in favor of the group. I just can't join you. I can't. I'm sorry.
Maybe let's talk again in the next meeting. Let's sit on it.
Sure,
Think about
we can
this,
put
how
it-
we can do
We
this.
can put it on for old business.
We should definitely move ahead with the committee selection.
Okay.
1 versus 2 can always be put.
Anything else?
Yeah, so I have some questions about some of the consent agenda. Should I wait until we get to that?
Please.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Cohen, did you have anything that you wish to address?
I do. I think I have to, right? So I will address Mrs. Pasternak's comments. And what I'll say to that is, it seems to me that leaving aside all the JP Morgan references, the right time to have done a risk management study was shortly after the Mount Laurel decision was passed. And it doesn't seem like one was done, or if one was done then the outcome of it was, let's risk it and see what happens if we don't do anything. And I think that's what's gotten us to where we are today. Going into a negotiation when we had a track record such as we had, it's no surprise that we came out with this type of settlement that we came out with. And once we had a settlement that was unanimously agreed by all 5 members of the board at that time, that's the one that we need to implement.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Did you have anything else?
Nope, that was it.
Thank you, sir. Deputy Mayor Vinayak?
All the points I had written was already taken care of. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Romano?
No, thank you.
Mr. Mariziti?
Yes, if I may, Mayor, I
may.
wanted to address the issue about the allegation of a conflict for Committee Woman Rufus and yourself, Mayor, in connection with the vote on the ordinance and I just want to say that there is no conflict in our opinion, and we have made that point in court. I've been asked at this meeting whether there was ever a legal opinion that we have provided with respect to that, and I've gone back into the record, and the answer is yes. In the briefs that we have filed in that case, my partners have argued, as I've said here, that there's not a conflict when there are many people who fall into the same situation. And that's what the opinion that we have given here with respect to the mayor and Committeewoman Krupas, that because many people are also affected by the SID, they may vote even though they are in that area. The analogy often given is that many people, I think, at this table are property owners that pay taxes, and you can vote on budgets and you can vote on things that raise and lower taxes. So it's similar to that. It's a smaller group of people, but it's still a very large group of people. So there's no conflict in our opinion with respect to voting on matters having to do with the SID. And that is a matter that we have opined on and is in the court record.
Mr. McDonald? Thank you, sir.
I'll address a couple things. One, with regard to the authorization for bid on lot 14. First and foremost, this is just an authorization to go out to bid. It does not mean that it has been bid or that it is going to be bid in the very near future, but I will certainly circle back with the engineering department just to be sure that no feedback was given to those property owners over there. And if it hasn't, we'll make sure that that is done prior to going out to bid. With regard to the budget question, one, the budget was pushed for two very simple reasons. One is that at the last meeting, we had 3 members of the Township Committee, and this meeting is spring break. And certainly if we had introduced the budget at this time, we would certainly catch some flack for that, I think. So we did push it back to April 18th to ensure that there is a full and robust participation in that introduction. Again, we have offered up May 4th as a budget forum, and then the adoption will be on May 16th. As far as the local finance notice goes, the township is a self-review this year. And generally speaking, as long as we have things scheduled, we will be just fine. I remember times in previous iterations of the governing body that budgets were introduced in June, waiting for state aid numbers to be had. So I think we're well within where we need to be. Just see if I have anything else that I would like to follow up on. No, I think that is it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Okay. We will now consider consent agenda resolutions. Are there any comments from the committee in regards to any items listed on the consent agenda? Ms. Krupas?
Yeah, so Alex, I'm just confirming for all of our residents that we can authorize the bid, but until you speak to the property, the engineering department, make sure that they've seen it, gotten to give comments. We're not going to actually go out to bid.
Well, they have seen it.
Right.
They've gotten to make comments.
Right.
Now they haven't seen what the
The
final
revisions,
version is.
the final version.
Right. And again, to avoid sort of an endless back and forth
Yeah.
on trying to get improvements done, we'll make sure that they're aware of the revisions that were done to that plan prior to going out.
Okay, great. And was there anything like super alarming? You were at that meeting?
Yes.
Was there anything that was like that you can foresee being a huge,
No.
having huge impact on the businesses there or any of the
No,
properties there?
No, quite honestly, one of the concerns was an area to walk. And because there is a small sidewalk for some time there, and whether we can extend that sidewalk deeper into the parking lot, and whether there could be lighting along that sidewalk as well. And there was some concern from the engineering department, quite frankly, and I believe it did come up in that meeting, that speed humps may not necessarily be a solid long-term solution. And there was discussion about pushing up one of the islands to actually create it so that wouldn't be just a straightaway there. But other than that, there was not a whole lot of conversation. It was more about the ability to walk back there and proper signage, which is also something that the township and the CID are working on in conjunction to create better wayfinding and parking lot signage to direct people to that.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Mr. Costa.
And the
Wasn't me.
23-111. Annette, were you at this meeting? Do they know who we're appointing?
Yes,
The recommendation came through the CID board, right?
Yes,
And they approved it?
I'm not 100%, I believe it was on, in March. His name is Carlo Caparuba. He rents space up at 636 Morris Turnpike, and he recently purchased the formal bridal shop. He's a longtime real estate professional with extensive knowledge in construction, real estate, economic development. We welcome him to town.
Great, and
I believe it was on the March agenda.
awesome. We're good. I'm good.
Okay,
Thank
anyone
you.
else? Are there any other questions regarding comments? Any of the items listed on the consent agenda? Seeing none?
I'm
Yes,
sorry, I
You
just
may.
want to make one clarification so that the committee is aware. So on the consent agenda is the authorization to execute the national prescription opiate litigation. This is the second time that the township will be doing this. And this involves Walgreens, CVS, Teva. And similar to the last iteration, a chapter 159 will come before the township committee once we receive funds through the settlement. The last settlement was based on population and based on instances of opioid in the township. So we received approximately $12,000. This money goes towards the purchase of Narcan, education, DARE, things like that. And so just wanted to make everybody aware. This is just the same process as we went through previously.
thank you. May I have a motion to approve resolution 23-099 through resolution 23-112, which are listed on the consent agenda?
So moved.
May I have a second? Second. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Ms. Purvis.
Yes.
Ms. Romano,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Banayak,
Yes.
Mayor Miggins.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Ordinance 2634-23.
Can
Yes,
we take a break?
you would like, yes, we may take a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
Terrific. Ordinance 2634-23, present for consideration an ordinance entitled 2634-23, an ordinance to amend and supplement the development regulations and zoning ordinances of the Township of Milburn, Chapter 6, subsection 609, entitled Supplementary Regulations. The purpose of this ordinance is to amend the Township of Milburn zoning code to include a prohibition of rooftop decks, platforms, terraces, and similar features on the roof of a building for use as a common amenity space. Such spaces are not characteristic in the township. This supplementary regulation would apply to multifamily, mixed-use, and non-residential buildings. Tonight is the time set for the public hearing and final passage as advertised in accordance with law. I declare the hearing open.
Yeah, my name is Jeffrey Feld. I support the endorsement of this second reading ordinance, but also I'd like to read the second whereas clause because I think it's very important. It didn't guide this governing body June of 2021 when you adopted the restaurant ordinance. Whereas goal number 1 of the 2018 master plan reexamination and update for the Township of Milburn seeks to, quote, encourage appropriate land uses that promote the character of the township as a small suburb of the highest quality, end quote. I hope that master goal 1 that is quoted in this will guide our actions going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Feld. Any other questions? I move that this public hearing be closed and the ordinance be adopted on final reading, and that the township clerk be directed to publish the ordinance by title as passed on final reading in accordance with law. May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Prupus,
Yes.
Ms. Romano,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Banayak,
Yes.
Mayor Megan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I could just state for the record that the planning board did pass a resolution indicating that the ordinance was not inconsistent as the statutes provide.
Thank you. Okay, so now ordinance 2635-23, calendar year 2023, ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriations limits and to establish a cap bank. Tonight is the time set for the public hearing and final passage as advertised in accordance with law. I declare the hearing open.
Jeff Feld, this is a standard ordinance that's done every year. If you don't do it, it could be negligence as under case law. However, the timing of this, that the second reading was supposed to be done today, sort of indicates that the budget was going to be introduced. About 10-20 minutes ago, we heard that the budget was not introduced because we want to have a full and robust discussion about it. However, there seems to have been an article today posted on the Tap Into Milburn regarding the Chamber of Commerce on the county level that indicates the mayor being quoted that we're just starting the process of the budget. That doesn't seem right, and I think we had to have questions that we didn't introduce it because maybe the holidays, but the process has been going on since the beginning of the year. Because there's a quote now that's out there that the process is just beginning by this board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Feld.
Gary Kung, I'm a resident. I just had a question. Oh, my screen. I just had a question, and I might just be reading this wrong. The first whereas says that you're trying to increase the 1% cap to a 3.5% cap. The fourth whereas says hereby determines that I'm going to read this carefully, 3.5% increase in the budget for said year is estimated to be $486,859.34 in excess of the increase in final appropriations otherwise permitted by local government cap law. So if I'm reading that correctly, 3.5% minus 1% is you're trying to go over the cap by 2.5%, which is 486,000. But then in the sixth whereas, it says the final appropriations of the Township of Milburn shall, in accordance with this ordinance, be increased by 3.5%, amounting to $1.704,007.68. So the question here is the 3.5% the 1.7 million? Because that doesn't comport with the 2.5% that's 486,000 in the third whereas. So I think what you're trying to say, and I don't know the exact magnitude of the numbers, I think the fourth whereas should probably say that 1% is the 486,000, because when you multiply that by 3.5, you get 1.7 million. But again, I could just be reading this entirely wrong. So just point of clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Best.
Hi.
Ms. Best.
I just want to apologize in advance because I may be misspeaking, so please feel free. So the only comment I just want, since you're voting on the budget tonight.
No, we're not voting on the budget.
Oh, it's a cap thing. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Just a capping.
Thank you.
Sure,
Thank you.
We don't do it then.
I move that this public hearing be closed and the ordinance be adopted on final. You want to
Can I
have,
talk?
oh, do you wish to? Go ahead. I apologize.
No, no worries.
Mr. Benayan.
So I've actually voted no for it in the first reading. I'm very concerned about $65 million operating cost for the township. And expense needs to be either 0 or 1% is the cap. It was meant for a reason. Increasing that to 3.5%, I think we really need to start looking into how we can decrease our operating costs. We are one of the highest operating cost township at this level of population that we have. So we need to invest all in the infrastructure cost, agreed. But we don't want to be in a position like, and don't quote me on this, but Board of Ed is always paying towards payroll expense, and that's why they keep going up and up on the taxes because they cannot control that. Everything is unionized. For us, if we don't control it now, it will and can be a problem in future. So for our kids and for a future generation, I would say we need to start looking at where we can save and where we can cut costs now. And that doesn't mean we are in financial trouble. We are absolutely in good shape. But in order to be putting brakes on for the future, we need to look at it now when we can resolve it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I move that this public hearing be closed and the ordinance be adopted on final reading, and that the township clerk be directed to publish the ordinance by title and passed on final reading in accordance with the law. May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Prupus?
Yes.
Ms. Romano?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Banayak?
No.
Mayor Miggins?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Old business. Steering Committee for Recreation and Open Space Master Plan Review. Mr. McDonald, please.
Yes, so this is just sort of a picking up where we left off at the last meeting. There were some comments by the Township Committee regarding what would essentially be a recommendation to the planning board of how they should constitute the steering committee for the master plan element that deals with recreation and open space. As was indicated in public comment, Mr. Cohen had asked that there be 2 members of the public as part of that. And so the committee has a copy of this draft resolution that would again be a recommendation to the planning board and a recommendation on the makeup of that board or that steering committee. So this is just sort of, I think, sort of, if we're talking just a little bit also about next steps, should the committee find that this is agreeable, we would put this on the next agenda to then be forwarded to the planning.
Can you go over what you have
For the committee.
for the committee
Yeah, sure.
recommendations?
So it would be a member of the Township Committee who serves Recreation Commission liaison, another member of the Township Committee, 3 members of the Recreation Commission, 2 members of the public who are residents of the township to be identified by the Recreation Commission, 2 members of the Planning Board, Environmental Commission Chair or designee, Shade Tree Advisory Board Chair or designee, Board of Education member or a staff designee. Myself, Business Administrator Chris Myers, Director of Recreation, Tom Doty, Director of Public Works, the Township Planner, and then of course any other municipal staff and professional as needed.
Can we specify qualities of people, residents, and so that we're not getting all the same, like a homogeneous committee, all who are looking at it through the same kind of preferences?
What are you thinking?
Well, I'm definitely thinking about different ages in our community. And then I would start there with different ages. Some people that have children, some people that don't have children.
That's fair. Do we have the detail posted online on this old business or, yeah, old business?
No, this is for your discussion as a committee.
Okay, can we post this online as well so we can get inputs from residents all again? There are people who will come and talk, but we have seen when we do presentation, there are a lot of inputs that we get, and there are some great inputs from residents too. So if they want to just see what exactly it's showing up as a draft, and if they have any inputs, they can send an email out to us, and that could be discussed here as well. So like Tara just, or Ms. Prupus just mentioned about different age group, and it's all good. I mean, if we cannot accommodate everybody's wishes, but we can at least look through that we haven't missed anything. But I'm not trying to stop the process. We can continue to send it to the planning board while making it public to the residents. Just thinking on this, I think old business and new business, we can have on our website, just have detail about old business and the new business, what all is going on. So they can come in for the input, not on the first or second reading. Whatever is the old business or new business is right now will come back as an ordinance or resolution later on. So you have much more time to give your inputs now versus stopping it at the last minute.
Mr. Cohen, do you have any feeling on this?
I mean, first of all, what we're reading was in the packet, I believe, on the website that anybody can see on the public. If we want to highlight it, sure. I mean, it's from what I've seen so far, when we're looking for people to be on these boards and commissions, it's not as though there are millions of people who are looking to do this. So, if we can drum up more interest, that would be great.
Ms. Arana?
I mean, I think this is just what we want of the planning board. Going forward to look at the master plan. I don't know. I mean, I guess I agree with the deputy mayor but I think we should move forward.
We should.
At the same time,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
and share what we have, if we could, if we could.
Sure.
But I don't think we should hold it up while we're doing it, if that makes sense.
I agree for this one. We shouldn't hold. We
Keep
have
moving
spoken
forward
about
on
this
it.
in the past.
Okay.
We should move forward, but maybe there's some kind of option out there for people to give their inputs before even get into the ordinance phase or old business. Like in new business, we are talking about zoning code.
Which
fee
we've been
schedule,
working on, right,
which-
right.
yeah, with the detail, if we can share, we should.
So we keep moving forward on this.
Yeah.
Ms. Prupus wants to make sure that every age is represented. I don't necessarily know the ages of the people that are chosen here. However, just different walks of life, as
It
it were.
just needs to be like a diverse committee so that, because there's so many different interests of our residents
Sure.
in this, like, that need to be examined through and drive this. Just want to make sure that it's not, people come and say that the rec commission came up with a plan that was like very much serving not the entire community. So I want to make sure that that doesn't become an issue again as we move through this master plan element of the recreation field.
Got
The
it.
rec committee is formed of residents, different ages, different everything.
But I
So
also-
if they're coming up with some recommendation, it's not from officers from the building or from elected officials. It is coming from
But
residents.
Right, I don't think that you know, there weren't many people that were speaking up for the part three, thank you, on the rec committee. There was no, because there wasn't a voice. Everybody on that, there was no one on the rec commission that said, hey, we can't, no to the, we're not destroying part three or replacing the part three. So we just need, and then we got to hear, and so I just think that there needs to be a nice, diverse,
Everybody at the
Can I
table.
just say,
voices, yeah.
I think as
It's not
part
just
of the
that.
process, Mr. Petto is gonna make sure that we reach out to as many community members as we can during the entire process.
Mr. Petto, I know you're on the phone. If you'd be good enough to tell us what your process is, please. Thank
Good
you.
evening. Yeah,
Good
good evening,
evening.
Mayor Miggins, members of the Township Committee. Yeah, as part of any master plan element update process, a robust public participation and outreach campaign is paramount to solicit broad community input and feedback to help, lay the groundwork and develop a vision plan for, aspirational goals for recreation and open space planning in the community. So, I think that, as we've, evaluated a public outreach process, I think public workshops, an online survey, youth targeted outreach, as well as, probably some senior targeted outreach as well, will be important to ensure that we have a broad constituency base that have the opportunity to provide input and feedback throughout the process. The steering committee needs to be the kind of guiding force and kind of the idea group that we bounce this public participation plan off of, make sure that we're able to target and identify input and feedback from all these different membership groups across the community. So, I do share Ms. Prupus's take on ensuring that we have a diverse group of membership. Again, this is a recommending resolution from this body over to the planning board. So the planning board can certainly, consider additional members or modify your recommendation. They don't necessarily have to follow your recommendation here too. But, I think that, as part of any master plan element process, we want to make sure that the participation is robust and broad and is detailed in the plan element as well, so that, future generations understand the scope of outreach that we did as part of this update process.
Perhaps we can simply add, since it is a recommending resolution, add a whereas clause that makes that recommendation that the committee is making now, that they focus on the diversity of the groups that is steering the process, and that, you can put in that language as well, that based on age or even participation in particular sports, things like that.
I think we should do the same process for rec committee too. It's a 5-year seat. So whenever somebody leaves, people who apply for volunteership, and it's a volunteer position, so we can't just ignore completely rec committee. Unanimously, they said yes, and there are few people, 4 or 5 people have actually joined in the past couple of years. So why did they say yes? Maybe there is something behind them on part 3, which they feel that maybe the field is even more important. So both should go in tandem. You guys, the people residents here should also go to the committee meeting and talk to them about and understand what is the logic behind them saying unanimously yes to it.
Okay, so it sounds like we have consensus too with those changes that Ms. Prupus recommends, that we have consensus to form the steering committee for the recreation and open space master plan review.
Well, yeah, we'll make sure that the resolution is on for your approval to recommend to the planning.
To the planning board. Terrific. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. New business?
I have one other quick question
Oh,
about,
yes.
do we give them, or do they come back with a budget? Like, do they come back with how much? How does that work?
So we did receive a proposal from topology for the process. Just received it today, so I'll
Okay.
make sure that it gets to the township committee, and that would also be provided to the planning board as well. But that will also.
Is
be
there a
part of it.
timeline in that budget?
Graham, can you speak to that a little bit? Timeline on that process?
Yes, we did include a timeline in parallel with the 3 phases of the scope of work that we provided. The timeline we anticipate is probably about a 4-month process, inclusive of all the public outreach components, advisory meetings with the steering committee, plan development and outreach, of draft materials, and then the regulatory adoption process at the planning board. So we're looking at an estimated 4-month process.
4 months. Anything else, Ms. Prupus?
No, I just recommend that 2 of those months don't fall in the summer.
Yes.
Maybe split the months up if possible.
Sure.
2 in the spring, 2 in the fall.
April, May.
If planning board can get on it that quickly.
Yep, okay. Might be
Sure,
perfect.
happy to make adjustments
Yeah.
to ensure satisfaction. Absolutely.
Okay,
Adjust it
thank
to the
you.
fall.
Thank you. New business, we have the zoning code fee schedule for committee discussion and input. Mr. Petto, will you speak to our zoning code fee schedule, please?
Sure, absolutely. So this is an ordinance that was put together by the Zoning Code Examination Committee, which is a committee that works to facilitate amendments and updates to the zoning code here in the Township of Milburn. The escrow and fee ordinance before you this evening provides a series of updates to application fees and escrow deposits for 1 and 2 family properties that are seeking deviations from what is permitted under the zoning ordinance, seeking variance relief from the boards, and also for mixed use, multifamily, and non-residential applications seeking site plan approval from either the Board of Adjustment or the Planning Board. In a bit of history research based on our last series with this, first, I want to thank your Township Clerk, Christine Gaddy, for her excellent research in finding the history of escrow and fee ordinance updates in the Township. The current escrow and fee ordinance that is in place, many component parts of it was adopted in 1989 and then amended subsequently in 1999. So we've had quite a period of time since this fee schedule has been updated to relevant current cost standards. Again, this is for properties, for 1 and 2 family properties that are seeking to deviate from the strict requirements within zone districts, seeking to do additions that encroach into side yards or fences that are taller than what's permitted, for example. So that is what is before you this evening. The other component of this fee schedule is also to constitute a more formal zoning permit process. The township does not currently have a good documented zoning permit application process. This will create a better record keeping for both the zoning officer and for homeowners that approve or receive approval for installation of things that do not require a building permit. Such installations such as conforming fences, placement of a shed, or other features now can be issued a zoning permit under this ordinance, which provides a better, more effective record of that change to the property that they did obtain approval, and it conforms with all township standards. Happy to answer any questions if anyone has.
Can we make this also available for the public? The detail on this? If it's not already there.
Yes,
So,
if I could supplement, so this is this is just a discussion. This would be scheduled for a first reading, and then as this is an amendment to the development regulations and zoning ordinance, this would be referred to the planning board for advisory review and then back to this body for a second read.
So since I'm also on the subzoning committee, the intent for this fee change was mainly to remove escrow. Earlier, we put money in escrow, or whoever was going in zoning variance was putting money in escrow, and sometimes the fees wasn't enough. And it was paid from the general budget and then was recuperated by the person who has put in those application or applicant. The intent there is to not go into escrow that way and collect that fee right from the beginning, so we can cover the attorney cost. So if you see in the detail anything going beyond that and you're opposed to it, please bring it up to the attention here. There's another intent to it is, if suppose there is something that you're doing in the house and you don't need zoning board approval, today you can do it without going even the permits. This one will give you a review. The township will give you a review, charge you $50, but give you a document saying that we have this on paper, on file, that you're doing that thing in your house, which may not require permit, but it will be like an official document, which will be in the township office as well as with you. So those are the two intent for this zoning code fee schedule. So if you see anything different, please bring up. It's a long fee schedule that is changing. your input will be great. And Mr. McDonald, please correct me if I said anything wrong there.
No, I think that was accurate.
Thank
I
you.
would, the only thing I would just comment on, and again, I think we've had these conversations before, but just from the township committee's perspective is understanding that anything that we post, such as this document, right, is a draft document, it could change. And, just to keep that in mind, with any posting of the material prior to the township committee's consideration.
Can we put draft in the background so it clearly says draft?
Yep.
Thank you.
So do we have consensus on that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we have consensus. Okay, we have consensus on that. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
May I have a second? All those